Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about something that hits at the core of human relationships, a concept that bridges our yearning for connection with our fear of losing ourselves in the process. Today, I want to dive deep into what keeps an avoidant man someone who runs from intimacy, who retreats at the first sign of vulnerability from walking away for good. It's not manipulation, it's not force, and it's not trying to outthink or outmaneuver him. It's emotional safety. Understanding the avoidant mindset. First, we need to understand what makes an avoidant man tick. He's not cold, he's not heartless. Deep down, he's often scared. Scared of being consumed by expectations, scared of failure in relationships, or scared of showing up and not being enough. His avoidant nature isn't about you, it's a reflection of his relationship with himself. If you want him to stay, the first step is empathy. Don't fight his fear, understand it. Ask yourself what's driving his retreat, because people don't leave situations where they feel seen, heard, and safe. The power of emotional safety. Emotional safety is the one thing that can anchor an avoidant man. It's a space where he doesn't feel attacked, judged, or forced to become someone he's not ready to be. When he feels safe, he lowers the walls he's built to protect himself. So how do you create this safety? You don't push, you don't demand answers to questions he's not ready to face. Instead, you lead with understanding, with curiosity. When he sees that you value his pace, his boundaries, and his individuality, trust begins to grow. Inconsistency and stability. Consistency is your secret weapon. Why? Because avoidant people live in a world of unpredictability. They expect relationships to crumble. Every time you show up with steady, reliable actions, you're teaching him something radical. You're different. It's not about grand gestures. It's about the small, repeated actions that signal, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I accept you as you are. The role of intrinsic connection. But let's be clear, it's not enough to just offer safety. The avoidant man stays where there's an intrinsic connection, a shared purpose. It's that deeper bond, beyond the surface level stuff, that keeps him invested. It's asking, what do we stand for together? What do we build that's greater than ourselves? Because when a relationship feels like a partnership towards something meaningful, it becomes a foundation he's less likely to walk away from. Patience over pressure. Now, this is where most people get it wrong. They rush. They try to push the avoidant man into vulnerability before he's ready. But let me tell you something, you cannot pull a flower into blooming. It needs time, sunlight, and care. Avoid ultimatums. They don't work here. The avoidant man doesn't respond to pressure, he responds to patience. Patience is not passive. It's an active choice to create the right conditions for growth. The transformational power of self-awareness. And here's the game changer, helping him become aware of his patterns. Not by criticizing, not by pointing fingers, but by gently reflecting what you see. For example, you might say, I've noticed that when things get intense, you step back. Can we talk about what that feels like for you? Self-awareness is the first step toward transformation. When he starts to see his own fears and tendencies, he has the power to choose something different. Here's the bottom line, an avoidant man doesn't stay because you make him, he stays because he chooses to. And he chooses to when he feels safe, valued, and connected. So I leave you with this, become the anchor, not the storm. The steady hand, not the one pointing fingers. The person who shows him that love is not a trap, it's a partnership that sets you both free. And when you do, not only does he stay, but the relationship transforms into something deeper than either of you imagined. Thank you. An avoidant man's mindset is a complex interplay of his internal world and past experiences. To truly understand him, we must first recognize that his behaviors are not random or malicious. They are deeply rooted in how he processes emotions, relationships, and his sense of self. At the core of his avoidance lies fear, not just any fear, but a profound anxiety about vulnerability, intimacy, and the potential pain of emotional exposure. This fear often stems from early life experiences. Perhaps he grew up in an environment where emotional expression was discouraged, or maybe he was made to feel that his needs weren't valid or safe to express. He might have witnessed relationships fraught with conflict, betrayal, or abandonment. Whatever the source, these experiences leave a lasting imprint. They train his mind to see closeness as dangerous and self-reliance as his safest refuge. When he engages in a relationship, the avoidant man is walking a tightrope between two conflicting desires. On one side, he longs for connection. Just like everyone else, he wants to love and be loved. On the other side, closeness feels risky because it means opening himself up to rejection, disappointment, or judgment. His solution to this conflict is distance, keeping relationships at arm's length so that he never has to fully face the vulnerability he fears. But here's the paradox: the more he avoids intimacy to protect himself, the more isolated and misunderstood he feels. This is where frustration often arises for his partner. His actions can seem cold, unfeeling, or even selfish. However, his avoidance isn't about a lack of care, it's about an overload of fear. He withdraws not to hurt you, but to shield himself. Understanding this dynamic is crucial because it shifts the lens through which we view his behavior. Instead of seeing him as detached or uninterested, we start to see a man who is wrestling with a defense mechanism designed to protect him from emotional pain. This doesn't excuse unhealthy behaviors, but it does offer a pathway to compassion. The avoidant man often communicates in ways that are indirect. He might hesitate to share his feelings, minimize the significance of issues, or brush off deeper conversations. It's not that he doesn't have feelings, it's that expressing them makes him feel exposed and vulnerable. Imagine a man standing in the middle of a battlefield without armor. That's how he feels in moments of emotional confrontation. To reach him, it's important to approach with curiosity instead of criticism. When he senses judgment or pressure, his instinct is to retreat further. But when you approach with genuine curiosity, asking open-ended questions and showing interest in his perspective, he feels less threatened. It's as if you're saying, "I want to understand you, not fix you." One of the greatest gifts you can offer an avoidant man is the assurance that his fears and feelings are valid. This doesn't mean enabling avoidance, but rather creating a space where he feels safe enough to lower his guard. For example, instead of reacting to his withdrawal with frustration, you might acknowledge it. "I noticed you've been quieter lately. Is there something on your mind?" This approach invites him to open up without feeling cornered. Another key aspect of understanding his mindset is recognizing that change takes time. The patterns of avoidance he's developed didn't form overnight, and they won't disappear overnight either. Patience is essential, not in the sense of tolerating unhealthy behavior indefinitely, but in allowing space for growth and trust to develop gradually. When you understand the avoidant man, you begin to see that his distancing behaviors are not about you. They're about his internal struggle to reconcile the desire for connection with his fear of vulnerability. By shifting from frustration to empathy, you create the foundation for meaningful dialogue and deeper connection. It's not an easy journey, but it's one that can transform the relationship and help him see that intimacy is not something to fear, it's a space where he can truly thrive. Emotional safety is the invisible thread that holds relationships together, especially for someone with an avoidant mindset. It's not always the loud declarations of love or the grand gestures that create this safety, rather. It's the quiet, consistent environment where someone feels free to be themselves without fear of judgment, criticism, or pressure. For the avoidant man, this sense of safety is essential. It's the one thing that allows him to lower his guard, step out from behind his emotional walls, and lean into connection. To understand why emotional safety matters so much, consider the avoidant man's inner world. He is often operating from a place of heightened self-protection. Vulnerability to him feels like a risk, a gamble that could expose him to rejection or pain. If he senses judgment or feels that his emotions will be dismissed or manipulated, his instinctive reaction is to withdraw. This isn't a conscious choice, but a learned behavior rooted in his desire to shield himself. Creating emotional safety doesn't mean walking on eggshells or suppressing your own needs. It's about fostering an environment where communication is open, mutual respect is evident, and both parties feel valued. For the avoidant man, this environment tells him it's okay to let your guard down here. You won't be attacked for it. One of the most effective ways to create this safety is by practicing non-reactivity. When an avoidant man feels cornered or senses a strong emotional reaction from his partner, his default response is to shut down. This doesn't mean that emotions should be suppressed in the relationship, but they need to be expressed in a way that doesn't overwhelm or threaten him. For example, instead of saying, "You never open up to me and it's so frustrating," you might try, "I value when we connect deeply, and I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking when you're ready." The tone here is key. It's inviting, not demanding. It communicates that the door is open, but he has the freedom to walk through it at his own pace. Over time, as he experiences this kind of patience and understanding, his natural instinct to withdraw begins to soften. Another crucial element of emotional safety is active listening. The avoidant man is often hesitant to share his thoughts or feelings because he fears they won't be received well. When he does open up, no matter how small the gesture, it's important to show him that his words matter. This means listening without interrupting, without immediately trying to solve the problem, and without dismissing his experience. A simple response like, "Thank you for sharing that with me, I really appreciate it," can go a long way in building trust. Consistency is also a vital ingredient in creating emotional safety. For someone who is avoidant, unpredictability can feel threatening. If he's unsure how you'll react or whether you'll follow through on your words, he's less likely to let his guard down. On the other hand, when he sees that you consistently show up with steadiness and reliability, it helps to counteract his fears. He begins to trust that this relationship is a safe space where he doesn't have to constantly be on high alert. It's important to recognize that emotional safety doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations. In fact, those conversations are essential for growth in any relationship. The difference is in how those conversations are approached. Instead of using blame or accusations, frame your concerns in a way that prioritizes understanding and collaboration. For example, you could say, "I've noticed that when things get tense, you tend to pull away. Can we talk about what's going on so we can work through it together?" Ultimately, emotional safety is about creating a partnership where both individuals feel seen, heard, and respected. It's not about perfection or always saying the right thing. It's about showing up with intention and care. For the avoidant man, the safety is the bridge between his fears and his capacity for deeper connection. When he feels emotionally safe, he doesn't just stay, he starts to grow. He begins to see that intimacy isn't a threat, but a source of strength. And in that realization, the walls he's built to protect himself start to come down, one brick at a time. Consistency and stability are the unsung heroes of a healthy relationship, particularly when it comes to connecting with an avoidant man. For someone who has learned to guard himself against vulnerability, the unpredictable nature of relationships can feel like walking through a minefield. Every misstep, inconsistency, or emotional outburst can reinforce his belief that closeness is unsafe. That's why creating a steady, predictable foundation is so vital. It's what allows him to slowly build trust and, over time, lean into the relationship with greater confidence. At the heart of consistency is reliability. An avoidant man needs to know on a deep level that he can count on you. This doesn't mean being perfect or suppressing your own emotions. It means showing up in a way that aligns with your words and actions. If you say you're going to do something, follow through. If you express a desire for honest communication, ensure that you're willing to listen without reacting defensively when he opens up. These small, everyday gestures create a sense of predictability that allows him to lower his defenses. Stability, on the other hand, goes beyond just actions. It's about the emotional environment you cultivate. Avoidant men are often highly attuned to conflict, and their instinct is to pull away at the first sign of discord. This doesn't mean avoiding disagreements. In fact, healthy conflict resolution is essential in any relationship, but it does mean managing those moments with calmness and clarity. Raising your voice, issuing ultimatums, or reacting impulsively can reinforce his fears and push him further away. Instead, approach disagreements with the mindset of collaboration. How can we resolve this together rather than, "Why are you doing this to me?" Another aspect of consistency is creating routines or rituals within the relationship. These might be small things like weekly date nights, morning check-ins, or simply sending a thoughtful message during the day. For someone who is avoidant, these consistent gestures provide reassurance. They signal that the relationship isn't volatile or fleeting. It's something he can count on. Over time, these routines become a foundation of security that contrasts with the unpredictability he may have experienced in the past. It's also important to recognize that consistency isn't just about your actions, it's about your energy. Emotional steadiness plays a significant role in helping an avoidant man feel safe. If you're constantly shifting between extremes, lavishing him with affection one day and withdrawing the next, it creates confusion and reinforces his instinct to protect himself. Stability means showing up with a calm and grounded presence even during challenging times. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions, but it does mean expressing them in a way that fosters connection rather than conflict. For an avoidant man, consistency also extends to how you handle his moments of withdrawal. It's easy to feel hurt or rejected when he pulls back, but reacting with anger or demanding explanations can make him retreat even further. Instead, approach these moments with patience and understanding. Acknowledge his need for space without making it about you. For example, you might say, I noticed you've been quieter lately. I'm here if you want to talk. This communicates that you're present and steady, even when he's navigating his internal struggles. Consistency isn't just about what you do for him, it's also about what you do for yourself. Taking care of your own emotional well-being is essential in maintaining a balanced dynamic. If you're constantly bending over backward to accommodate his needs without honoring your own, it can lead to resentment or burnout. Part of creating stability in a relationship is ensuring that you're grounded in your own life with your own goals, passions, and support systems. Over time, the combination of consistency and stability helps to erode the avoidant man's fears. It shows him in a tangible way that this relationship is different from the ones that have shaped his defensive patterns. It teaches him that closeness doesn't have to come at the cost of his autonomy or emotional safety. And most importantly, it creates a space where trust can grow slowly, steadily, and authentically. In the end, consistency and stability aren't just tools for keeping an avoidant man from leaving. They're the foundation of any meaningful connection. They create a partnership where both individuals can thrive, free from the anxiety of unpredictability. For someone who has spent much of his life guarding his heart, this kind of steady presence is transformative. It's what allows him to step out of his protective shell and into a relationship built on mutual trust and respect. Intrinsic connection is the glue that binds any relationship, but for an avoidant man, it is the foundation that can make or break his ability to stay. Avoidant men are not drawn to superficialities or fleeting attractions for long. They need something deeper to anchor them. This connection is not just about chemistry or shared interests, it's about creating a bond that transcends the surface level and taps into a shared purpose, mutual respect, and a profound understanding of one another. It's about showing him that the relationship is not a trap, but a partnership that adds value to both lives. At its core, intrinsic connection begins with mutual respect. Respect is the recognition of each other's individuality, strengths, and boundaries. For an avoidant man, this is critical. He needs to know that he is seen and valued as a whole person, not just as someone who fulfills a role or expectation. Avoidant individuals often fear losing their autonomy in relationships, so a connection rooted in respect helps him feel secure in maintaining his identity while still being part of a partnership. One way to foster this connection is by focusing on shared values and a common vision for the relationship. Superficial attractions may spark interest, but they don't sustain connection. Instead, ask deeper questions. What are your goals? What drives you? What kind of life do you want to build together? When the relationship is based on shared principles and a mutual understanding of what matters most, it becomes a space where he feels aligned rather than pressured. This alignment gives him a reason to stay beyond the emotional highs or temporary fears that may arise. Another crucial aspect of intrinsic connection is emotional authenticity. Avoidant men are often wary of relationships because they fear emotional manipulation or losing control. Authenticity counters this fear by creating a space where both partners can express themselves honestly and openly. This means being vulnerable with your own feelings without overwhelming him with expectations to reciprocate in the same way. It's about showing him that vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's a strength that deepens trust. For example, instead of demanding that he share his emotions in a specific way, you can model emotional openness by sharing your own experiences. You might say, sometimes I feel nervous about expressing my thoughts, but I've found that it helps me feel closer to you. This approach doesn't pressure him to respond, but invites him to engage in a dialogue at his own pace. Over time, this creates a rhythm of emotional give and take that feels safe and natural. Intrinsic connection also involves appreciating the small, everyday moments that strengthen a bond. Grand gestures may feel meaningful in the moment, but it's the consistent attention to detail, the thoughtful questions, the shared laughs, the quiet support during difficult times that builds lasting connection. These moments communicate, I see you, I understand you, and I value you. It's important to acknowledge that building this kind of connection takes time. Avoidant men often need longer to fully trust and engage in a relationship. Patience and persistence are key. Intrinsic connection is not something that can be forced or rushed. It develops organically through shared experiences and mutual growth. As the connection deepens, he begins to see the relationship not as something to fear, but as a source of strength and stability. A shared sense of purpose is another powerful element of intrinsic connection. When a relationship becomes about more than just the two of you, when it's tied to a greater mission or shared passion, it creates a dynamic that is both grounding and inspiring. Whether it's building a family, pursuing shared dreams, or supporting a cause you both care about, having a common goal adds depth and meaning to the relationship. For an avoidant man, this shared purpose provides a reason to stay engaged, even when his instinct might be to retreat. Finally, intrinsic connection means embracing each other's imperfections. An avoidant man needs to know that he doesn't have to be perfect to be loved. This doesn't mean tolerating unhealthy behavior, but it does mean creating a space where mistakes are met with understanding rather than criticism. When he feels that he is accepted for who he truly is, flaws and all, he is more likely to invest in the relationship. Intrinsic connection isn't just about keeping an avoidant man from leaving, it's about creating a partnership that both partners cherish and nurture. It's a bond that is rooted in respect, authenticity, shared purpose, and unconditional acceptance. When he experiences this kind of connection, the fear that drives his avoidance begins to fade, replaced by the realization that this relationship is not something to escape from, it's something worth staying for. Patience is the silent power that often goes unnoticed in relationships but holds immense strength, especially when dealing with an avoidant man. For someone who instinctively retreats at the first sign of emotional intensity, patience becomes a lifeline, a steady and unwavering force that communicates, "I see you, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." It's not just about waiting, it's about showing him through your actions and presence that growth, trust, and connection are possible even in the face of his fears and defenses. To truly embody patience, you must first understand that change is a gradual process for the avoidant man. His behaviors and mindset didn't develop overnight, they are the result of years, sometimes decades of conditioning. Whether it's past traumas, failed relationships, or emotional wounds from childhood, these experiences have shaped his view of intimacy and vulnerability. He's not avoiding connection because he doesn't care. He's doing so because his internal wiring has taught him that closeness equals danger. Patience allows you to respect his timeline without losing sight of your own needs. In practice, patience means giving him the space to process emotions and experiences at his own pace. It's natural to want answers or immediate signs of change, but pushing him too hard or too fast can have the opposite effect, causing him to retreat further. Instead, create a sense of safety by being consistent in your presence and support. When he takes even small steps toward openness or connection, acknowledge and appreciate them. These moments might seem minor, but for him, they represent significant progress. Patience also involves managing your own expectations. It's easy to fall into the trap of wanting him to open up in the way you envision or at a pace that feels comfortable for you. However, true patience requires letting go of rigid timelines and focusing instead on the journey. This doesn't mean sacrificing your own emotional well-being or tolerating behavior that undermines the relationship. It means finding a balance between honoring his process and staying grounded in your own needs. One of the most powerful aspects of patience is its ability to communicate unconditional acceptance. For the avoidant man, one of his greatest fears is being judged or rejected for his vulnerability. When you approach him with patience, you're sending a clear message: I'm here for you. Not because of what you can give me right now, but because I believe in who you are and who we can become together. This kind of acceptance is transformative. It chips away at his defenses and allows trust to grow naturally. Patience doesn't mean passivity. It's not about sitting idly by and waiting for him to change. It's about being actively engaged in the relationship while maintaining a steady, supportive presence. This might involve setting healthy boundaries, expressing your feelings in a calm and non-confrontational way, or seeking opportunities to deepen the connection without overwhelming him. For example, instead of demanding an emotional response, you might say, "I'd love to hear your perspective when you're ready. Your thoughts matter to me." This approach invites dialogue while respecting his need for space. Practicing patience also requires self-awareness. It's important to recognize when you're feeling frustrated, hurt, or impatient, and to address those emotions in a constructive way. This might involve journaling, talking to a trusted friend, or seeking professional guidance to process your feelings. By taking care of your emotional well-being, you're better equipped to show up for the relationship with clarity and compassion. Over time, patience creates an environment where the avoidant man feels safe enough to explore deeper levels of connection. He begins to see that his fears don't need to dictate his actions and that vulnerability doesn't have to lead to pain. This shift doesn't happen all at once. It's a gradual process of unlearning old patterns and building new ones. But with patience, those walls that once seemed impenetrable start to crumble, revealing the potential for a stronger and more fulfilling bond. Ultimately, patience is about believing in the possibility of growth. It's about trusting that even though progress may be slow, every step forward is a step worth celebrating. For the avoidant man, your patience is not just a gift, it's a demonstration of love, resilience, and commitment. And in the end, it's this steadfast presence that makes all the difference, turning a relationship that might have been defined by fear into one that thrives on trust and connection. A non-confrontational approach is a powerful tool in cultivating and sustaining a connection with an avoidant man. It's not about suppressing your own emotions or avoiding important conversations, but rather about presenting issues and feelings in a way that invites dialogue rather than triggering defensiveness. For an avoidant man who is often highly sensitive to criticism and conflict, this approach can be the key to fostering understanding and trust without pushing him further into retreat. When it comes to addressing concerns, the way you approach the conversation matters as much as the content of what you're saying. An avoidant man's natural defense mechanisms are often activated by tones or words that feel like blame, judgment, or attack. If he perceives that he's being criticized or pressured, he's likely to shut down or withdraw to protect himself. This is not because he doesn't care, but because confrontation feels like a threat to his emotional safety. To take a non-confrontational approach, start by choosing the right time and environment for important discussions. Avoid bringing up sensitive topics when emotions are already running high, such as during an argument or when either of you is feeling overwhelmed. Instead, aim for a calm, neutral moment when both of you can focus on the conversation without distraction. A relaxed setting, like during a walk or over a casual meal, can create a less intimidating space for communication. Framing your concerns in a way that emphasizes your feelings rather than his actions can also make a significant difference. For example, instead of saying, "You never communicate with me," you might say, "I sometimes feel unsure of where we stand, and I'd really like to understand how you're feeling." This subtle shift removes blame and invites him to share his perspective without feeling attacked. It shows that your goal is connection, not confrontation. Equally important is maintaining a calm and composed tone during these conversations. Raising your voice, showing frustration, or interrupting can escalate the situation and make him feel cornered. A steady, measured tone signals that the conversation is safe and that you're not looking to fight, but to understand and find common ground. Even if you're feeling emotional, taking a moment to pause, breathe, and collect your thoughts before speaking can help de-escalate potential tension. Active listening is another essential component of a non-confrontational approach. When he does open up, it's crucial to give him your full attention without interrupting or jumping to conclusions. Resist the urge to immediately offer solutions or counter his points. Instead, focus on validating his feelings, even if you don't fully agree. Simple phrases like, "I can see how you'd feel that way," or "That makes sense, thank you for sharing that with me," can go a long way in building trust and encouraging further openness. It's also important to recognize that avoidant men often process emotions differently. He may need more time to reflect on what's been discussed before responding. Pushing for immediate answers or reactions can overwhelm him and reinforce his instinct to pull away. Instead, give him the space he needs while reassuring him that the conversation remains open. You might say, "Take your time to think about this. When you're ready, I'd love to hear your thoughts." This approach shows respect for his process and removes any pressure he might feel to respond on the spot. A non-confrontational approach doesn't mean avoiding difficult topics altogether. It means addressing them with care, empathy, and intentionality. It's about recognizing that the goal is not to win the conversation, but to strengthen the relationship. By focusing on mutual understanding rather than assigning blame, you create an environment where he feels safe enough to engage, even in challenging discussions. Over time, this approach helps to rewire his associations with conflict. Instead of viewing it as something to fear or avoid, he begins to see it as an opportunity for growth and connection. He learns that being honest and vulnerable doesn't have to lead to rejection or pain. It can lead to deeper intimacy and trust. The non-confrontational approach is ultimately about balance. It allows you to express your needs and concerns while also respecting his boundaries and emotional triggers. It creates a dynamic where both partners feel heard and valued, laying the groundwork for a relationship that thrives on collaboration rather than conflict. For an avoidant man, this approach can be transformative, helping him move beyond his fears and into a space where true connection becomes possible. Relationships are not just about love, they're about understanding, growth, and connection. When you're navigating a bond with an avoidant man, the journey may feel like walking a tightrope, balancing your own needs with his fears. But the truth is, when you learn to approach him with patience, consistency, respect, and a deep sense of intrinsic connection, you're not just creating a space for him to stay, you're fostering a relationship where both of you can thrive. Remember, the avoidant man isn't inherently incapable of love or commitment. He's simply guarded by layers of fear and learned self-protection. He doesn't want to leave. He wants to feel safe enough to stay. And that safety is built through steady actions, heartfelt understanding, and communication that invites rather than demands. The key to unlocking his heart lies not in breaking down his walls with force, but in showing him that he's safe to lower them himself. When you prioritize connection over confrontation, patience over pressure, and growth over perfection, you create a dynamic that feels less like a battlefield and more like a partnership. This journey isn't just about transforming the relationship, it's about transforming each other. It's about evolving into two people who choose each other every day, not out of fear, obligation, or habit, but out of genuine love and alignment. By embodying these principles, you're not only helping him stay, you're building a bond that neither of you will want to leave. And that's the true beauty of love. When both partners grow together, fear fades, trust blossoms, and what once seemed impossible becomes the foundation for something extraordinary.